The best practice is to put those as close to the power source as possible. That way, if it does create problems, there's less chance of burning more things up. So, and a lot of the radios you'll see, like the Yaesus and the Kenwoods, they'll have a fuse on both the positive and the negative. So it's always a good idea to do that. Mainly on temper installs, you can run your radio to like I call it a cigarette lighter or a power port. Nowadays, there are probably more power ports than cigarette lighters. I haven't seen a cigarette lighter in a car, an actual cigarette lighter, in a long time. And so make sure how much current you can draw from that. I generally say, rule of thumb, 25 watts or less, or mid or low power. And that's usually you'll be okay there. But you're probably not going to be able to power your 50-watt radio off of it, because number one, the wiring is pretty cheesy on cars that go to those power ports. And number two, if it is fused for 15 or 20 amps, then the size of wire they put on there, I just don't trust it. So I would say try to say 25 watts or less if you're doing that. And antenna installations. So a lot of it's going to depend on what kind of vehicle you have, if it has a metal body or not. You know, quarter wave, half wave, 5/8 wave are kind of your three standard, have always been around type of antennas. Yeah, Comet, Diamond, they make antennas that are like a quarter wave over 2 half waves, or a 5/8 wave over a quarter wave. So that's how they get extra gain and do different things like that. So when you see antennas with astronomical gain levels, it's because they're actually stacking elements of antennas. But keep it simple, stupid is always probably the best thing to do. I have found that just a good old quarter wave is a good antenna, especially if you're running around Springfield or around town. You don't necessarily need the extra gain. A half wave is nice because you don't have to have a ground plane. So a ground plane. Anyone have a good explanation for a ground plane, what we're calling a ground plane? Okay, I'm going to give you my explanation then. So a ground plane is when you mount it to say the roof of your car, all the metal underneath the antenna, that's your ground plane. So if you have I don't know, what's the car, the plastic roof, a Corvette? If you have a Corvette and it's got a fiberglass roof on it, or a Jeep with a cloth roof, which you're not going to mount an antenna on probably, but you might mount on the bar, there next to it, or you might have the plastic, part of the Jeep that removes and you mount it in the back. That's not going to act like a ground plane because it's not metal. So a half wave antenna does not have to have a ground plane. So that's why a lot of times if you see someone mounts an antenna on, say, a mirror on a semi-truck, or somewhere where it's not exactly ideal, like on a boat, like a fiberglass boat, you want to have a half-wave antenna. A bicycle, that's not a good place for a half-wave antenna because there's just not a good ground plane. So I say the best on this is if you have a 3/4 inch NMO mount. And I've got some pictures of this. I'll show it on the next slide or two. Okay, trunk lip or hood lip mount. L brackets are also okay. Larson put out a diagram years ago. It talked about where your best places are for your antennas. Obviously, the best place is right smack dab in the middle of your. And then it talks about, if you go back on the trunk, it's minus a half a dB. And if you go over different sides of the trunk, when you start looking at going to the sides of cars, you're going to have some directivity involved. So just be aware that if you put on the back driver's side, your best receive and talk is going to be toward the front passenger side. So that's where your ground plane is.
A comment on roof mounts, be cognizant of the height of the antenna you're putting on there.
Yes. So yeah, you obviously don't want to put a big high gain antenna on a roof, like a Diamond. I mean, you can buy the antennas that have the foldovers, right? But they do fall. Yeah, they do break, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if you get to leave them up. So I might have done that before too. That's what this hobby's about, learning stuff. Sometimes you learn by breaking. So anyway, this is what I'm talking about, an L bracket. This is your typical 3/4 inch NMO. So why they call it 3/4 inch is because that's just how big around it is. There's a couple of different versions of that. I like this version that's shown here where it has a ring around the outside. And that one you feed the coax down through your roof or through this mount. And then you tighten the nut up. They have some small ones that are 3/8 inch NMO mounts. You drill a 3/8 inch hole and then you push it up from the bottom. And then you tighten it. The problem is when you go take that antenna off, say it's been a few years and it's corroded, and the center has come loose on this, and so you got just this little part here, and you go to pull it off, and you pull the whole outside off too. Well, what happens? It falls down into your roof. Then you got to take your headliner down, or something to that effect. So if you use this mount, that doesn't happen. This saves you a lot of time and effort, where you actually feed it down from the top first instead of going in from the bottom. So this is your trunk lip mount. I've used a lot of those over the years. Basically, it slides over your trunk lid or your hood and have some set screws that go up underneath it. That actually forms your ground, or makes your, so you want to actually score the paint when you put that in, tighten it up enough that that happens. My rule of thumb on that is tighten it till you go through the paint, but don't tighten it so much where the bracket starts bending, because you can. And then you have to modify it with a pair of pliers or something so it holds it again. These are some other fancy mounts. I've used this mount before. This is a pretty good mount, pretty solid. I think it's a K400 maybe. Yep. Good mount. You notice they've got this nice little RG174 coax, so it fits between your trunk lid. If you have a trunk lid that fits really tight to the body of your car and you need smaller coax, that's something else to think about when you're buying a mount, is can you fit RG58 through it or not. And this is the mount that I always wanted to buy, but I never did. That's the motorized mount. You press a button in your car and it folds your antenna down for you.
Garage doors fold it down for you too.
Yeah, automatically as well. And I got some pictures of some standard antennas here. Your quarter wave, like on 2 meters, you're talking about 18 inches. If you're a 440 quarter wave, you're about 5 or 6 inches. You start getting up higher in frequency. So Randy, the aforementioned famous Randy, he decided to put a quarter wave on 1200 megahertz on his truck. You don't want to take a guess how, yeah, 1.25 inches. It actually works. You can't buy one. You have to buy one of these that has a removable corona tip on it and then cut it down and put that back on. So that's your quarter wave. Your half waves, usually a dual band antenna will have like your center loading coil here, and then you have your base coil. No ground plane required. And then your 5/8 wave on the far right will have a losses on coax. Generally, I think 15 to 20 feet is about right for how much coax they send with those antenna mounts. So if you have, 15 foot of RG174, especially on UHF,
Right.
I mean, it's one thing that's going to cut your power back on VHF, but on UHF, you're really going to notice it, because that stuff is like 1/8 of an inch, maybe not even that big and round. So it's pretty tiny stuff. And some mounts will have like a short run of that and then another connector inside. I've had antennas like that before, like that K400 had that. And then you had like some other, I think it's an FME connector or something, where you connected it together to your larger coax. So, but gain is not your only consideration. You have to, your performance, balance out what are you looking for out of it. Maybe you live out in the sticks, you need some more gain. You may not want a 4-foot antenna. But can you get in the garage? You know, do you want to rip it off? I've seen, actually this happened to me once. I had the antenna got caught in between sections of a garage door and ripped it out of the roof. That was fun. So yeah, there's all sorts of things to think about. You just have to be careful. Stealthiness, I like the black coated antennas as well because they don't stick out as much like as a chrome colored. You usually will pay a little bit more for that. Not a lot. Not enough to like, make you think about not buying one. So, not generally. I mean, you want to get something that's like not a metallic type of spray paint or something.
Okay.
But
Be careful about painting a center load loading coil though.
really,
Yeah.
okay.
Depending on what paint you wind up using, you'll wind up creating a bridge.
Oh, well, that's true too. Yeah. So seems like I did paint one of those once, and I taped over it with electrical tape.
That's what I did.
Yeah. So that's one thing. If you have a chrome center loaded antenna or anything with loading coil in the middle, don't paint on it.
Okay.
It's like you said, you can bridge across it from the upper and lower elements. So that's a good point. I think we already kind of hit this with the smaller coax. A good RG58, especially if you get double shielded with the foil and then the braid, is always good. The way your coax, what's better or worse coax is you can look at the loss of the coax. You can also look at the percent of shielding. So back in the old days when you could buy Tandy wire coax and you'd strip that off and it's like, man, there's a few strands of copper on the outer braid. It's like, oh, it's 50% shielded or whatever, It's garbage basically.
But it was a good deal.
Yeah.
But back in those days too, at the same time, we didn't know better.
Yeah. Okay.
Honestly, we
Yeah.
didn't.
So there's another thing about shielded coax. You're putting these in a car that has a lot of electronics in it. So if you can get double shielded, you have less chances of problems. My fear was always, I'm running this next to my airbags. Do I really want to key up and my airbags go off? So, and that's a whole other point. If you're put on the roof, make sure you go behind the airbags and not over them, because you want those to be able to come down, if you need them. So I've seen that done before in professional environments, and
I'd
it's
actually be afraid of being that close to the explosive setting out.
yeah.
Honestly, I would.
you just got to be careful. So usually airbag stuff is marked with yellow. So just if you see yellow stuff in your car, like yellow loom or whatever, I always stay away from it. So same thing goes with working on airbags or around them. It's not a bad idea to get into your fuse box and take the fuse out for your airbag system, because if you actually do something and you're on your steering wheel and it comes out, you're probably going to lose your head. So it come out pretty fast. So it can kill you. Power connections. So if you don't want to run it back, or you have multiple things that you are going to be putting in your car, like say you have 12 radios you want to put in there or something, you might want to use a fuse block. So what I like to do on something like that is run a larger gauge wire from my battery back to the fuse block. Of course, you're going to fuse it too. You're not just going to run it and not fuse it, because you don't want it to catch on fire. Blue Sea Systems is a fuse block that I like to use. You can buy them on Amazon or wherever, different 6 or 12 position or even more than that. But what I like about some of them is you have your ATC fuses here, but you also have a ground terminal. And not all of the fuse blocks that you buy will have that ground terminal on there too. It just makes it more convenient. Sure, you can put ring terminals on your ground and get a single self-tapper with a star washer and run it through your floor. Just don't hit your gas line or your gas tank. You can do things like that, and it's okay. It'll work. But I just like the convenience of having the ground and the hot right next to each other. So, and they actually do come with these labels. Most of the time, they're completely useless for what you're going to do. So, wire sizing is important, absolutely. And I've experienced this too, just because at one time I hooked the radio up and I didn't have the right size of wires. I'm going to just use this. And then you wonder why your radio doesn't work or why your power output's lower. So you're starving your radio of current capacity. So my rule of thumb is if you're going to install your radio and say you don't have the factory power cord with it, you want to use the same gauge of wire and try to keep it around 10 or 15 feet as what is on the little pigtail that comes on the back of your radio. And if you're going to go further than that, you're never going to go wrong by putting bigger wire in. So that's not really going to hurt you. It just might make it more difficult to feed it where you need to feed it later. And 12 to 14 gauge wire seems to be pretty common. On the fuse blocks, I don't think I've ever run anything bigger than 8 gauge. Usually 8 or 10. I know people run bigger than that in cars, but it's just kind of overkill. And also use the fuse with your radio. I've seen people, their fuse keeps blowing and it's a glass fuse and they put a bolt in it, you know. It's just not a very smart idea. It's just not. So if your radio is blowing a fuse, it's for safety reasons. It's protecting your radio, it's protecting your car. So don't try to bypass it because it can catch on fire. So I might have also done that too. So that's the best way to do it. If you're going to fuse it and you don't know what to fuse it at, I always say the current draw of the radio plus 30%. So say at 10 amps or 12 amp, 15 amp fuse. 15 amps pretty common fuse for a 50 watt radio. It's probably not going to draw that. If you're going to be using a 100 watt radio, you want to do a 30 amp fuse. So for your HF rigs, and even that's more on FM than sideband probably. Sideband's not going to be as continuous, but
Most manufacturers put a 25 amp on both sides.
yeah. So 30 might be a little bit overkill if you're running a sideband for sure. And sometimes people will take a fuse that's blowing and put a bigger fuse in it. Again, that's also not really a good idea. It's better than no fuse or a bolt for sure, but you just have to be careful you don't catch things on fire. Routing your cable, to me, I don't mind drilling holes in cars, so that doesn't really bother me. But running the power wire can be difficult, especially these days. I did actually drill into a wiring harness in a car once. You remember that? Yeah. Yeah, that was a bad thing. So don't do that, okay? Learn from my lessons. Lots of times, and I've got a picture of this coming up too, there's a grommet in the firewall. Some cars have them in the floor pan underneath your car, like where your feet would sit. It'll be like a little 1-inch grommet, and you can poke your power wires through it. Especially if you're mounting it underneath your seat, that's a great place to put a radio these days, and a great way to get power wire in. Lots of times over on the driver's side or the passenger side, you'll be able to find some place to run your cables. So this is one of my favorite places here, and this is usually around the steering area or whatever. These are way oversized, as you can see. Way oversized. And they got that one harness going through there. In this particular case, this person obviously ran one wire. They are grounding to the chassis somewhere because I don't see a ground wire in there anywhere. So you can do that. It makes it easier. Yeah, in the picture I have here, you can definitely tell it's just one wire. So usually just a small, if you can fit it between, like take a screwdriver and kind of loosen up this grommet from around the wiring harness. Of course, be careful. Don't puncture things. But sometimes you can do that. Otherwise, I'll sometimes just take a utility knife and make a little X in that up there. And you got to kind of look at it from both sides, maybe a couple times, and make sure before you start doing that. So just my recommendation. Your mileage may vary.
From under the hood going into the car or from inside the car going out?
Usually you'll have to kind of do it from both.
Oh, okay.
So that's one thing you'll want to look at when you're doing the installation. Another thing that's handy to use too is if you have a metal hanger.
Okay.
Once you kind of get the hole cut, then you can get that and see where it's going to show up at. And then if it's big enough, you can always, use that to pull it back through, tape it to it really good and pull it back out. So it works pretty well. So where you mount your control head or your radio, that's going to be pretty much wherever you want to mount it at. These days I've kind of resorted to putting things underneath the seats. It's because it's convenient, especially the passenger seat. And that way my wife thinks she's hearing voices in her head. Not really. Usually it's just more annoying than anything. But you might have to have an external speaker. So that's something else you may want to consider mounting somewhere. Or if you have one of the fancy Anytone radios, you can Bluetooth it to your car stereo, and every time someone talks, it interrupts your radio station. Yeah.
You can get those fancy headrest ones that you can run down to the control.
Yeah. There's all sorts of things. They used to have a switch you could put on your gear shift and turn your mic, put a boom mic on, and all that kind of jazz. So now there's even the Anytones have like a remote battery-powered push-to-talk button you could put on your steering wheel. So there's a lot of things now that we have that we didn't have years ago. I have put radios in the trunk before. They do get really hot in the summertime. I only did that once. Don't think I'll do it again. But a lot of people do that.
I would not recommend putting the older FTM 400.
Really? Okay. That's good to know. So yeah, some of the radios are obviously meant for that more than anything. So the commercial radios, I think, if you're going to go the commercial radio route, like a good Motorola or Kenwood or even an ICOM, they're more meant for that type of environment, both for moisture and for heat. So just something to consider. A lot of the radios will have fans on them too, but it's not always ideal. So remote head mounting, this is a pretty cool little deal they've done here. Just mount it down here, probably with some double-sided tape or something. I don't like Velcro for this kind of stuff because in the summertime it tends to get hot and your Velcro slides on you. So I like to use double-sided tape. 3M double-sided tape is nice. Get the foam, gives you a little cushion on it, and it helps it to stay in place better. Microphones, you can see where this one's mounted. They've got your typical mic hook. I'm going to guess it's probably actually screwed into the dash there. I've not had a lot of luck. Unless you get the mic holders that have the support on the top and the bottom and putting double-sided tape on the top and the bottom. That really doesn't work very well with just double-sided tape. So you got your standard suction cup mount to your windshield, and then you've got the metal arm mount and then the Jimmy rig mount. You're not even going to laugh about that? That's my dad's car, the Jimmy rig. His name's Jim, so I call it Jimmy rig mount. That was about, you remember having that in your Escape, I guess? Yeah. I had to dig through the archives for that one. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah. Are there any legal considerations? Can you get in trouble for having a radio mounted anywhere above the dash?
Not that I'm aware of in Missouri.
Missouri doesn't have any. Would be, especially where he's got that, that's not really a field of vision. Yeah.
The deal is,
blocking your field of vision.
of course, nowadays, I've had cars where they got this to a computer up there and they have no vision between there.
Yep.
And as my wife will tell you, I don't like that. It's a blind spot because when you're my height and you're sitting in a car, I lots of time will look over the rearview mirror to see people coming on the on-ramp. And when you had a little Ford Bronco Sport, couldn't see. So that was one of the big things I hate about that car, big blind spot. So it was her job to tell me if there's a car on the on-ramp coming down because I couldn't see him, especially the right angle. I do like these metal arm mounts too. If you want to, of course you got to be careful. You got to know what your dash is capable of supporting too, and how heavy the control head is. And then we go to press on buttons. How heavy is your button presser? Are you gonna?
There's a version of that metal arm mount that connects to the bolt for your seat.
Okay, yeah.
And then it comes up like a gooseneck type thing with the mount on it. That's pretty neat.
There's a whole rabbit hole of stuff if you really are interested in this. Not only just control head mounts, but actually antenna mounts. If you want to spend some bucks, like if you got like a $70,000 or $80,000 pickup and you don't want to drill a hole in it, they've got these really cool like third brake replacements that have enema mounts built into them. They're really neat, but they're like $400 or $500. So you'll pay for it, but your coax comes in. You don't drill any holes anywhere. They work great.
Well, that's just like mounts. If you don't want to make up different ones, go to Lido mount for inside.
Yep, Lido. Yep.
They've got all kinds of different ones that you can mount to your seat bolt, and it comes up in the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what John was just saying. There's a lot of different options out there. So that's why I was saying, one thing that's nice, of course, now because you can get on the internet and do some searches and type in 2025 Chevrolet Tahoe and radio mount, and you can see what other people have done, or 1979 Ford Thunderbird, and how are people mounting their radios in there?
Hey, James.
Yeah.
I was out traveling the last couple of weeks running across an RVer that got in trouble for not having a clear windshield in a state, and I couldn't remember the state that he was in, so I looked it up. But it says here, California, Connecticut, Illinois, Maine, Nevada, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, and Virginia. If you got anything besides a rearview mirror on your dash or in your windshield, they'll pull you over and cite you for it. I think the guy that I was talking to was probably Illinois, since it's close.
Yeah. I guess that applies to GPSs too, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cell phone holders, everything.
anything.
Huh.
If it's on the windshield, besides the rearview mirror factory installed, they'll pull you over because his RVer had his cell phone up there for mapping and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and he got nailed.
Huh. Interesting. So that's something to keep in mind if you're going to be traveling to Illinois or some other state like that. So that's a primary offense. They can pull you over for that. You don't have to have some other citation like turn signal or anything.
It's kind of like seatbelt law in Missouri. They see you without a seatbelt, they pull you over.
Interesting. Well, that's something to definitely keep in mind. Dash mounting. I've thought this is pretty neat, and this is probably less prevalent than it used to be, because used to, it's a big deal when you car, you have your den mounts and you can pull out the little plastic den, and so if you're changing your car stereo, you had to know how big it was so you could slide it back in. And now everybody's got those huge entertainment or infotainment systems in there, and it makes it a little harder to do this. But like sometimes you have an empty den, which is basically a pocket, say you put for your garage opener or something. And we've done this before. Maybe it was in your vehicle. Didn't we cut the back off of that once and then slide it in? I think it was one of your cars. So it worked out pretty well. And that's honestly, the next slide I have has, I think it's Ken with TM281 in it actually. They advertised that it was meant for like a one U den mount. So that's why you'll see that some as well.
And what I did too, I bought a new den.
So you'd have it, yeah.
That way when I straight card, I just put the den back.
Yeah.
Put the radio down.
And this is what I'm talking about here, where you mount it in the console. Say that's an open spot there, you can mount it in there. So of course, all the electronics nowadays. So make sure you use good shielded cable, coax cable, and make sure the connector's tight, because obviously getting to it's not going to be that fun in the future. Professional radio consoles, I like these. This is what I have in my truck right now. This picture is kind of screwed up, really. So this would be like the front of the car. You're looking down, you have your gear shift, your cup holder, and then there's numerous different manufacturers of these too. You can really go down a rabbit hole with that. Giotto Desk, Havas, and there's others. Those are probably two of the most common. And they come, usually when you buy one, it comes with, when you buy one new, it comes with whatever faceplate you want. You can buy them without faceplates, but then you got to pay like $30 per faceplate afterwards, so you end up spending more money. Or you can change radios out. It's just, cost of doing business, I guess. But it gives you a nice professional look as well, and it gets everything out of the way. But you have to have a car that works in too. You can't do that in like a Ford Mustang or something, There's lots of cars. So if you have a pickup, generally that will work, and they make all sorts of different ones for pickups. It's some of the SUVs. You can look up, 2020 F-150, and it'll show you all the consoles that work in a 2020 F-150. So, and usually it's a range of years. Control head mounting. This is something like with the FTM 400. It has a GPS receiver built into the control head. So when I had my FTM 400 in the car, I had it on just your typical suction cup and put it over on the left side near the A pillar, as out of my way where it wasn't really in my way, but I could get a GPS signal so I could do APRS and all that. Bracketron's another company that makes some of these types of brackets like that. And what is neat is you can't go to Best Buy and some of these other places, or like Love's Truck Stop, or any of those type of truck stops, and they have a lot of this type of thing if you just want to look at some of these mounts in person. We talked about Lido earlier. So yeah, and then some manufacturers, and this is what gets me. Some of the manufacturers will come with a mount that will work with the control head, and some of them don't. Like the FTM 400. It comes with looks like a stand you set on a table and a single thumb screw, but no other way to really mount it.
Well, you could use the tape to mount it on your dash if you wanted to. That's how it's mounted. That's how my control head is mounted on my stand, on my shack in the house.
It was like that. Yeah.
So I don't think that was gonna stay on
Yeah.
the tape in a hot vehicle.
Yeah. So I mean that's another thing to think about. You know, when you're buying a radio, is does it come with a bracket for the control head? Does someone make an aftermarket bracket? Can you jerry rig something that will work?
Well, Icon will give you a bracket for the control body.
Here you go, John. You got ahead of me about 10 slides. A gooseneck that connects your seat bolts is another ram mounts. There's like I said, lots of good things. The cup holder mounts are kind of intriguing sometimes, depending on the vehicle you have. So this is the Bracketron suction cup mount I was telling you about. This is what I used on my FTM 400 actually. And it's actually a great mount. I had no problems with it. And then you have your Lido arm seat bolt mount, where this would slide underneath your seat bolt right here, and then it has a gooseneck for your control head. The only thing I don't like about those type of mounts is you want to make sure the gooseneck's actually got some girth to it. You don't want to be like pressing against a slinky or something. It's like it can't withstand your pressing a button to turn it off and on. It gets annoying. Vent mounts. I've had these before. I didn't care for it at all. Don't like it. And not only does it obstruct the air, that one's missing a knob too. It looks like. I don't know whose radio where that came from. And this is your suction cup where it just slides down to your cup holder in your center console. Again, it's got the gooseneck. And obviously some of these, these are meant for situations where you don't really have another way to do it. But yeah, I did not like the vent mount at all. I don't even know why whoever thought that was a good idea. I don't know. Maybe it is for some situations. And also we talked a little bit about the microphone. You can't forget about that. What are you going to do with the microphone? This is another thing I don't like. Some of these radios, like that FTM 400, the microphone comes off the RF body. And then you have to buy an extension cable if you want to get the microphone where you can get to it if it's underneath your seat. Or you have to make one. Doesn't come off the control head. So make sure when you're looking at radios, that's something you think about too is, where's the microphone connect to it? I always just like to screw my mic clips into place. You can also hang them from your rearview mirror, just like Smokey and the Bandit. That always works too. Oh, you think you get in trouble for that in Illinois?
I don't know. They got some laws that it's ridiculous.
Yeah, in Mountain View, Colorado, you will.
Yeah.
It's a little tiny suburb of Denver, but it's like 2 square miles or something like that. But they've got the strictest cops in the world. Even just like air freshener hanging from your rearview mirror, and they will pull you over and hit you.
Huh.
Oh yeah.
This is kind of an interesting idea here. I've not tried one of these. I saw that. I thought that's kind of neat. I would think though, if you haven't seen them, there's and I've seen them at truck stops and other places, but they're a little black plastic mic clip. They don't have like the metal ones. They've got the little indention or nipple that sticks out and it holds your mic into place. What I'm talking about for something like this is larger. It's not so custom fit, and that we can get your mic in and out of it easily. Because you couldn't put that on a regular clip in that, because you'd be lifting the whole thing out of your vent. It would never work. The only problem with something like that is it's going to rattle. So, if you've got a good ignorer, then it's probably okay for you. And then maybe you might be able to put like some Velcro or something on the back of the mic to keep it from rattling and making noise. I don't know. So there's things you can do to work around stuff if you put your mind to it. And the external speakers, a lot of the mobiles just have crap speakers in them, really. They're underpowered. I had a Kenwood, you buy a radio, say, if you remember the old TM742 line of radios, this was like a $1,000 radio years ago. It had a speaker about like that in it. It's like, it wasn't even good if you had it next to you, It's just the audio quality is poor to begin with, and then it had no audio. So think about that too. There's some good powered external speakers that you can buy. Does anyone have a good external speaker they recommend? No? Okay. I had a Radio Shack powered one for a long time. It worked pretty well. And I've got a Motorola one that's got the nice chrome It's heavy. I mean, you could use it as a weapon if you needed to. But it's a powered speaker, so it's got a lot of audio to it. But, finding a place to mount the speaker to, and that'd be something to kind of neat too, that they made to where you have Bluetooth powered external speakers. So, or Bluetooth connected. Then you have to power it, I guess. But yeah. Any questions or comments? That's all I really had on it.
I'll just jump in and say a lot of those things too. I found a lot of things on Thingiverse cause I've got a 3D printer, so.
3D printers, yes. And that's another thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of these things are already designed, and I haven't put my 5100 in the vehicle yet, but we got a Toyota Sienna just recently, and it's got a lot of dead space right in front of the center console. So I just opened up some CAD tools, and I've been modeling out a holder for that. I think I'm on my 6th or 7th revision.
Yeah.
I print it, and like make some adjustments, and then print it again, but that's always a good option if you're looking for something very, very custom.
Yeah. And then you can get exactly what you want. Yeah.
Just be aware of the temperature sensor. You use
Yes.
PETG or something.
Right now
Yeah,
I'm using
ABS.
I'm using PLA right now because
Oh, wow.
I'm prototyping because I'm not yeah.
Yeah.
So for prototyping it's fine. When I do the final print it'll be an ABS for sure. It's ABS. Yeah.
But you could use PETG or PCTG.
Yeah.
As well. But do not, if
Yeah.
your final print, don't print it in PLA and put it in the car.
No. Yeah. PLA
If
will
it gets
melt.
130 degrees inside that car, that thing's just gonna go on.
So that's, there's lots of things. If you can do 3D, if you have the capabilities of doing 3D printing, or you can twist someone's arm. So, any other good ideas anyone wants to share installation wise? All right. Well, that's all I have. We will see you guys in October.
Nice job.
Tuesday night.
James, nice job.
You like that?
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's
Hey.
That was a great class.
Oh.
I'm Andrew, by the way.
Yeah, Minder, yeah.
Yeah, I
So you just got your lessons last week, you passed it?
I did, yeah, just
Okay.
yesterday. I've been studying for a while, and I figured, I just want to get on the air. I didn't need to get 100 on the exam.